Carcass's new album. God damn it. I drew a blank on the name of it.
That's the intro.
Album. God damn
it. That's the intro.
No,
go to presses.
it's not.
Let's keep that one.
Send it.
That's so good.
So, as I'm aware, most metal fans have seen the news about the Judas Priest guitarist, Richie Faulkner. Part of what caused that on stage to happen is because he heard Carcass's new album, Torn Arteries, is coming out, and he didn't have a chance to play on. So he wanted to show him that he could really, truly do the Torn Arteries justice and decided to have an aortic dissection while playing Painkiller live. And folks, we are going to talk about that Torn Arteries by Carcass today on Thunderdome Metal Reviews. How are y'all doing today, gentlemen? Well, let me make introductions first. With me, as always, is the Dr. David Pizzo, the Reverend Ben Lindsay, and the murdered by mustard gas Gabe Cooper. How y'all doing today?
Too soon, Tracy, but yes, we're doing great.
Suffocating from mustard gas, but otherwise, totally fine.
Otherwise, inordinate.
Inordinate.
Yep. At least it wasn't Torn Arteries.
It's true.
No, that's the thing. I have a friend who just had to have their aorta replaced with like a cow aorta. So yeah, no, this shit is real.
It is real. And this is Torn Arteries, the 7th studio album by Carcass, released on September 17th of 2021, recorded at Ghost Ward Studios in Stockholm, Sweden, and the Station House in Leeds. Was released on Nuclear Blast, mastered by Jans Bogren, has a runtime of 48 minutes and 58 seconds. The band is Jeff Walker on bass and lead vocals, Bill Steer on guitars and backing vocals, and Daniel Wilding on drums and additional vocals.
As it has been for thousands of years. They have another guitarist now, but he didn't make it in time to do anything. So they're back to a 4-piece in public because Surgical Steel was their first one recorded as a 3-piece. This is only the second one like that.
Yeah, I believe he is actually credited in the liner notes, but he didn't do anything on the album.
Yeah, exactly. No, he gets an honorable mention, and I'm glad they have a fourth person. But
was it part of issues traveling due to COVID kind of deal, or
no? He just didn't join in time. This album was delayed by over a year.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So this album is still a COVID album, but it's a COVID album that took most of COVID. Like they did it and they got ready, and then fuck.
Yeah, they recorded this back in 19. So
just that statement about Dance of Ishtab, this is a stadium stomping song that no one will ever hear as the discarded COVID tests blow by like tumbleweeds. Like that. I don't know if you read that interview with them.
I didn't, but
holy shit. Yeah, no, they're like, this is a barn burner no one will ever listen to because everything is dead. It's what they said. So this is very much a COVID album, as we said during our last review of Horse.
Yeah,
they fell into that trap. What it seems like every band that's releasing an album in the second half of this year is they're like, well, we got an album that will hold it until here because hopefully it's blown over. Then vaccines will be back to normal, and
it just didn't.
By the time
we could have been.
Yeah, but by the time everybody's like, all right, well, we're not touring now because of it. These albums are already at the manufacturer. They're already being pressed. It's too late. The horse is out of the barn at that point.
Well, this horse is awesome. I don't know if it's a pale horse, and I know some of you may be non-believers, and I'm going to probably stop being your friend. But when I heard those two advanced tracks, I was like, fuck yes. One sounds like Surgical Steel, and the other sounds like Death and Roll. Because you all know how I feel about, what did I give that album, Tracy? 179? 128. Anyway, that I love this Death and Roll shit, and not a lot of it exists. It's like this, a couple Entombed albums. Like not a lot of people took metal to this place, and not all of the albums like this. That's why I like about this album. I feel like it's a mix of Heartwork and Swan Song, kind of.
I agree with that completely because they do throw some backwards glances at their early catalog with their use of medical terminology and everything else, which I really appreciated.
Me too.
I was actually somewhat surprised that they stayed in the Death and Roll zone for as long as they did. I kept waiting for this to like really kick it up in some like high gear thrash, and they never did that.
Well, Surgical Steel did. I know why you were waiting for it. Their last album absolutely did do that. This one just kind of doesn't.
Yeah. And, there's nothing wrong with that because I like that pace. I was just really surprised at, into a peek into how the sausage is made. If you listen to our last review, you know that we did something that was goth, doom, grunge. And the pacing of those two albums were so close together, even though the heaviness was slightly out of ratio, because I do think that this is heavier than that album was. So that was actually made this a very pleasurable week thus far, to listen to. And as somebody who was there, even though David is much more familiar with Carcass than I was, I really enjoyed how strong this was. And goddamn, they have a great guitar tone.
Yeah, they fucking do. Bill Steer is a legend.
Yeah.
That dude, just like even in the slow parts, just like the riff on, not to get into songs, but on Dance of Ishtab is not that complicated, and yet, like, just the tone, it's a tone thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what happens when you've been making music for 40 years or whatever. So
I have more to say, but I want to give Tracy and Gabe a place to get in here.
Please, otherwise Ben and I will just be like blah blah blah.
All right. Well, I think I started on my Carcass journey fairly recently, and I basically tried to go back through the last few records. So I wanted to listen to Surgical Steel, I wanted to hear Swan Song, and I wanted to hear Heartwork.
The best albums, in other words.
Well, I wanted to go further back, and I probably still will. But I think I had a conversation with David about Swan Song and how totally weird I found it and not accessible whatsoever. But that's just me. Like I didn't find an entry path there.
Mm-hmm.
But Surgical Steel and Heartwork, I would just fully won over by them. And I was really happy to hear echoes of both of those on this record. That is, that said, like, just because, it's not full on thrash the entire time doesn't mean it wasn't enjoyable for me. Because I think the better part of the album works at whatever tempo they happen to be playing at. I think it does show that their experience, leads them to be able to write tracks that are diverse in tempo, but still, pretty heavy and consistently so.
Yeah, they're very relaxed and very confident on this album. That's clear. Like, because Surgical Steel was interesting. That was a reboot after a really long hiatus. And so I feel like they had to prove that they could still throat punch. And so they did. So this is, I think, the first album where they're like, okay, we've proven we exist again. And the pandemic is stupid. And there's just a thing in them that, like, and I think this is a very British thing. I've said this to you. I've asserted this in other reviews. I think they, even more than Americans, embraced the Muddy Waters, Howling Wolf roots of all of this, right? Like Sabbath, man, like that's the thing. So I feel like that whenever they do that, they do it so well. And so the death and roll tracks on here are so fucking good. But I also love that there was a mix. I don't know if I'd want another Swan Song. Like I like that it was some Heartwork and some Swan Song, and I feel like they don't have to prove shit. And maybe it's because I'm already a convert, but I feel like the playing on this album, they made it sound sort of effortless, and they just did the thing. And it sounds great. Like, it's well produced, this is not their first rodeo by a long shot.
Yeah, this album is fantastic. I'm going to say it's fantastically well done, produced, songwriting. It's really great overall. And again, just to second you guys, like the guitar work and the sound on this album is fucking fantastic. As I was listening to it, the Dance of Ishtab, is that how you say it?
I guess I'm just guessing. I couldn't even find out what that was. Yeah, Ishtab. Yeah,
Ishtab. Like that. I can't remember the name of it, but it's that fucking wood block with like a hole in it that makes an appearance in that song as well.
And it should.
Well, yeah, they got that, the groove, the death and roll sound down to a T on this album.
Do.
You guys have maybe a convert on the groove and death and roll. I was here for it.
We're gonna hit you so hard with Ride Straight, Speak the Truth, because the second Entomb that does this, because that was the thing that pushed me in this direction, was that, and then Swan Song itself. And I feel like it ended up being an evolutionary dead end, like dinosaurs or humans, and so like it didn't get to evolve the way it could have.
Well, to that point, and it's because of the fact that, you know, there's only 2 bands effectively that do it. I mean, there are a
Kinda.
couple of others. This sounded a little dated because I hadn't heard
I can
that
see
sound since the 90s. You know, again, not that I don't like this album, not that I don't think it's great, but, you know, I have to put out the things that
For sure.
stood out to me as well. And, you know, there are moments where it sounds like really old thrash, as well as a throwback to their early
Sure.
catalog. But, you know, like first couple Megadeth albums, maybe, or the Awaiting the Label Slayer era and the riff construction. I love that stuff, so that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it just kind of surprised me a little bit. And then the only other negative thing, as much as it is a negative, much like the last album that reviewed, I feel that the vocals are a bit weak. They're better than they were on a Pale Horse Called Death, but also not his best work, I don't think. But
he's aging, man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a hard vocal style to keep doing.
It is. And I think he does very well, considering, kind of like Bruce Dickinson, like both of them have had to keep, and they've obviously, Iron Maiden's even older, obviously.
Yeah.
But they're both somewhat from that same scene, just pissed off old British people, like making metal. And yeah, he can't do what he could do in Heartwork, but he still sounds fucking terrifying on this album. As I would agree, I think Bruce Dickinson delivered a very amazing performance on that album. So I know we're not reviewing it; we already did. But
well, you know, I think that they're in a different category than Dickinson as far as vocal talent.
Sure, definitely.
But yeah, no, he does sound terrifying, and you know, he doesn't hold back. I mean, he's certainly going for it, and maybe that's why they didn't kick it up super duper fast, is so that he didn't have to strain his vocals even more by giving that awesome growl at a faster tempo. But nothing to dislike about it, just not as strong as it used to be.
No, that's fair. And I have no evidence for this at all, so it'll be the thing I assert super stridently. Anyway, I think that the death and roll stuff on here, while on one level is resurrected 90s, also, to me, and it's probably just a me reading, it's very subjective, absolutely is harmonic with the grotesque, slow grinding horror of this era we're living in right now, right? Because things aren't moving super fast. Everything is jammed up, fucked, broken, stuffed, backed up, supply issued, whatever it is. Like, I feel like we're in an issue where speed is not happening. It's like this slow burn horror. Maybe I'm just reading too much into my own professional situation right now.
Wake up and smell the carcass, David.
Wake up and indeed, that album is awesome, Gabe. Anyway,
I did like that medley.
That album is so good. Anyway, because there's a whole album called that, of sort of like outtakes. Anyway, I feel like this slow being shoved into the sausage machine thing that they do is exactly, at least for me, psychically, where 2021 is.
And it's exactly where we are. I mean, I think it works for music of the times.
Me too.
Because we're such back to a shit show. And since they wrote this in 2019, they were and to an extent prophetic in the way they wrote it. If just everybody's jammed down and just slow plotting again.
Well, they hate the system and always have. Like, that's their thing. And it's not improved with time. Like, this thing now versus when Heartwork came out in the mid-90s is not better. So, and like Ben, lyrics matter a lot to me, and they fucking hate the system. Hate it. They are, and in that respect, they're very British. They're in that sort of pitch shifter and napalm death space, right? In terms of nobody hates capitalism like the British.
And the lyrics are really strong on this album.
They are.
I mean, I think that's one of the strengths is the lyric writing. Shall we talk about some songs?
Let's do it. Someone other than me, because you know what I'm going to say.
I do know what you're going to say. I'll go first. I think Dance of Ixtab is amazing. I also really loved Flesh Riding Sonic Torment Limited. that might be my favorite fucking song on this album.
So good.
And honestly, I think that is kind of where the album hits its stride. Is there because Eleanor, Rigor Mortis, Under the Scalpel Blade, and The Devil Rides Out are okay, but they're not super great. But Flesh Ripping, Sonic Torment Limited through In God We Trust are amazing. I enjoy Wake Up and Smell the Carcass for the ludicrousness of it, with caveat emptor. And I think that the Sky's Remorseless Swing is a really good closer.
I have a question to me. I was meaning to ask. The Size Remorseless Swing, there's a riff in there that I feel like I've heard somewhere else.
Let's see. I do love that song. Do, do, do. Yeah, where else have you heard that? Yeah, I guess it evokes a lot of shit. But it's a really sort of melancholy, sad. I mean, like the end of this is grim. Like that they end on that note is, and I think it dovetailed very much with the other two albums we listened to this week. Right? There's a lot of this like Death Clock Hourglass shit this week. So
try to rewind the death clock. I dare you.
Yeah, I dare you. You cannot. The side just cuts you in half.
I love those lyrics.
Me too.
Yeah.
The world doesn't belong to you. Like there's a lot of shit on here that's very evocative of the stuff that was on Swan Song lyrically. It doesn't belong to you.
I'd have to listen to it again, but I think that's one of the ones that really reminded me of early Megadeth.
I think so too. I'll just get this out of the way. They're all amazing. I love all of these songs. I really love the death and roll stuff. So Density Top is fucking fantastic. Under the Scalpel Blade, I heard a bunch of times because it was on an EP they released. But I really dig The Devil Rides Out. Flesh Ripping is amazing. And then I really dig In God We Trust, lyrically and otherwise. And then The Size Remorseless Swing is a devastating closer. I mean, I know I'm an easy mark for this. Like I probably would have died on this hill even before hearing the album because I'm such a brand loyalty bitch. But this album fucking rocks.
No matter how good or bad the album is, it's me plus 25 in David's book.
Shut up, Tracy. It's like Lamb of God's last album. Anyway, but also
Tracy, you're about to do that on the next review, so I don't want to hear nothing.
But I think this is legit good and amazing, and I'm glad I made you all listen to it.
Well, I'm going to second David's opinion. I think all the songs there are damn good in their own right, but agree that Dance Is Tob, Under the Scalpel Blade, The Devil Rides Out, Flesh Ripping Sonic Torment Limited, and God We Trust, and The Size Remorseless Swing are the standout songs. So half the album is a standout, fantastic track.
Agreed. And the other half are fine, but just going along.
So I think I really enjoyed how the beginning of the album was sequenced. I think Torn Arteries, Dance of Ishtab, and Eleanor Rigor Mortis is a nice 1, 2, 3 there. And this album only really dips in the middle. I didn't think that Under the Scalpel Blade or The Devil Rides Out were too exciting. Partly because one of them is too slow and partly because of sort of the death and roll thing. But tracks 6 to 10 are bangers, each one of them. It's just a really solid back half of the record. Particularly Flesh Ripping Sonic Torment Limited, as well as In God We Trust and Wake Up and Smell the Carcass, caveat emptor. Flesh Ripping Sonic Torment Limited and Wake Up and Smell the Carcass, those are sort of like the longer tracks, but they don't feel long because all of the parts actually work as standalone even parts. I mean, they could have split them up a little bit, but they just don't, and it's I think it works great. The last track is more rocky. The Sights Remorseless Swing is more rocky, but I don't really mind it. It's just like badass. And then they kick it up maybe a notch with the tempo, but it doesn't really run out of control at the end, which is fine. And it goes along thematically too, as we said with the lyrics.
Turn the clock back, Gabe. I dare you. You can't.
All right, David.
I mean, I'm not going to give it 102, Tracy. Tracy's like, is he going to give it 102? No, it doesn't have classic status yet, and I agree that occasionally it drags a tiny bit. So I'm going to make a huge concession and only give it an A. Like I'm gonna come down from the lofty pedestal of A+, which I've given Heartwork, and Swan Song and give it an A. But if I listen to it more, it might be an A+. I mean, you know, you're going to hear about this again between this and the Fear Factory in terms of the end of year stuff.
Yeah.
Like, this has been a banger or a banner, one of those B words, banner year in terms of badassery from some of my favorite bands. So this to me is a solid A, and I love it, and everyone should listen to it by law all the time. Everyone's like, shit. Everyone's going to give it a. I know everyone gets really quiet. Oh, dude.
I'll go ahead and go next. I like this album a whole lot, but I do think it drags in some places. And between just their overall minor things, I think this is an excellent album. I'm going to give it a B+. But between like the weak vocals and this sounding dated to me, even though I love that mid-90s stuff, just doesn't cross over into the A's.
I'll take a B+. I don't know why, like, suddenly I'm representing Carcass legally, but
Gabe?
I'm going to go ahead and give this an A-. It's a great record. It's not a perfect record. It's not, without any flaws whatsoever, but it is really great. And I can listen to it all the way through. No real problem.
And I'm right there with Gabe. I'm going to give it an A- as well.
well, it's not so bad. What's that Thunderdome grade? Probably an A-, right?
It's a 92.
Yeah.
Fuck
You
yes.
and David, you and Ben cancel each other out. And
Yeah.
We always do, emotionally. Well, I love that you all didn't hate it, because otherwise our friendship would have ended, and it would have been sad to me. I would have had like a Thunderdome secession podcast where we only review Carcass and Slayer over and over. We're reviewing Rain and Blood for the 4th time this week.
By yourself.
No, it's only me, Gabe. I have no
Yeah.
friends at this point.
Yeah.
Speaking of no friends, Tracy, what are we doing next?
Next, we're looking at Rivers and Nihil's released for the month of September in the album The Work, which I'm sure Ben's going to love.
Ben loved it. I can tell. Ben's
I
just
can
like
too.
gushing about it.
You know, as a teaser, when I first started listening, my first listen through the album, I loved it.
Oh, interesting.
It
The subsequent listens.
was the subsequent listens that changed my
Oh,
opinion.
how
goodness.
interesting. Oh, I was the
plot
opposite.
thickens.
No, I can't
Yeah.
wait to be in that episode.
See.
So,
So thank you for listening to Thunderdome Metal Reviews. And we'll check out what will probably be the top of most.
contentious.
Well, I don't think it'll be that contentious of a review, because it does not evoke strong emotions in me like some albums that we have reviewed have. But I do think that this is an album that is going to be on the short list of top 25 albums of the year for most metal media.
It will be.
Yeah.
And will definitely be at the top for one reviewer here.
But not another.
Yes, but not another. But anyway,
Tune in.
thank you. Tune in, and thank you for listening to us here on Thunderdome Metal Reviews.